I'm going to talk to you today about who we are, what we do, what we offer. From some of our conversations at our table today, we had a lot of folks come up who's Mistral, what do you guys do? So I think that's going to be good. The second set of questions and our next topic are going to be what models do you offer? So we're going to go over that. We've got a lot of them. We're going to talk a little bit about what we're building, some of the stuff that we're bringing from our own innovation, and then bringing and making available to you so that you can build and get things into production. If there's time, I'll talk a little bit about my own experiences getting something into production, and hopefully there's some learning there. I'm going to take the bold move of not showing code at 4:30 on a Friday, so hopefully everyone appreciates that. And then, yeah, I'm going to leave some time for questions. We're around. It'd be great to hear from you. Okay, with that, so we are Mistral, all right? So sometimes we get referred to as that French AI company. If it's not obvious already, I am not French. I like to call us a global enterprise AI company. We're headquartered in Paris. Our founders are all French, as well as our head of engineering, who's here today. Thank you, Lilia. Right? And we are right now about 500 employees. So we're growing as our business grows and being able to support our models, our tools, our platform, as well as our customers. One of the kind of key tenets of Mistral is that we're founded just on science. All of our founders are published. They're all active researchers, including our CEO. Our head of HR famously likes to quote that he can code, and he does. And in terms of like our mission, it's to put AI that we're building, frontier AI, into the hands of everyone and help you create value out of that AI. Right? Our focus is on real outcomes. You're not going to hear AGI talk a lot from us. What you are going to hear is real outcomes on moving things into production. So I covered some of this in the previous slide, but I like this visual because it shows our journey over time. So we started, there's the paper that was released, the model was dropped, the mixture of experts model that we first released, and we've evolved since then. So we started doing our first commercial deals in 2024. In addition to models, we're offering deployments. We have moved onto that to include services in the form of our applied AI engineering team, where we work on co-innovation. So that means building with you. And a lot of our customers who have gone down that path with us have seen increased value and also shipping things into production. In the future, we're going to be focused on a lot of those things. We do have our chat application, Le Chat, and you're going to see additional stuff happen in terms of applications in 2026. Okay, so what models do you offer? This is a small smattering of what I think is 20-something models right now that we're serving. So, starting with our state-of-the-art models, these are our generalist models. So we do have an offering. You'll see there color coding for what are open source, Apache 2, open weight licensed models, as well as our commercial license or premier models. So Medium, that's our flagship model. It's used a lot. It's got multimodal inputs, sophisticated use cases. I call it our workhorse model. It's used a lot. It's used a lot in all of our applications, some of the stuff we serve to you. We have Small. This one punches above its weight. I call this one the Rocky model. It's extremely cost efficient. It's also got reduced latency. So for atomic tasks, singular use, if you're using agents where it's essentially kind of doing one or two things, this is a really performant model and suited to your use cases. Moving on from that, we not pictured on here is our large model. It's a premier model. It's for the most complex of tasks, and that's also an open source, open weight model. Moving to the right of that is our Voxtral family model. So this is for text-to-speech. We've got our mini transcribe model for transcription use cases. And then we've got Small for instruct use cases. So this is being able to introspect an audio file that you're sending to it, all within one API call. So what is in this audio file? Or what are the comparisons between the two speakers? You're able to do that. This family of models outperforms Whisper 3, which is kind of the standard open source model used for these use cases right now. Moving on to the top right, we've got our coding models. So we've got CodeStroll for auto-completion and fill in the middle. We do have a set of models for agentic coding. That's our DevStroll family of models. And not pictured on here is our CodeStroll embed model, which is used to embed coding data sets. So combined with Medium, all of these models are set up as an offering that we do have called Mistral Code. It's an assistant that lives within your IDE, so that's Visual Studio Code or your JetBrains models, and that's available for use now. Going to the bottom left, we've got Magistral for reasoning. So this is useful for handling complex user queries, where you might not necessarily want to use a large model right away, and also because it's, or one of the variants is open source, open weights. You can introspect the system prompts. You can modify the think tokens as needed. So for any compliance type use cases, if you've got chain of thought that you need to show or planning that you have to show as part of that disclosure, it's very useful for that. And rounding things out, we've got Mistral. These are our edge models. So for other leading proprietary edge models, these outperform. And then finally, our OCR and Document AI models. So OCR has leading state-of-the-art benchmarks for images, PDFs, and Office document formats. It's serving as efficient and highly performant. And then with Document AI, we allow composable annotations. So that allows you, within a single API call, to retrieve markdown of what's in those documents or images, in addition to other things. So with the text annotations across the entire corpus of the document that you are doing, so summarize this document, create an abstract for me, that does that. And then for every image that's within that document, providing the ability to composably set what you want out of it. Do you want a description? Do you want alternative text? That's all available with a single API call. Okay. All right. So as we've been learning, and I'm sure you're all running into with getting applications into production that use AI, it's more than just the models. All right. So even with the best models, going into prod is a big challenge. Right, so limited visibility, having multiple platforms, tools, or standards, a lack of understanding of why performance is a specific way with no way to automate. Right, production systems in enterprises do not live on their own. You have to integrate with them, and usually these are deterministic workflows. So a set of rules that need to be executed to be able to get data from one part to another part. The rules even exist within agentic systems, as we're learning. So everyone's talking about agents, we're doing agents, and you really do need in enterprise a mix of deterministic and probabilistic, and that's what we're running into right now. Also, having a system of record. So you're deploying all of these things. There's prompts, there's models, there's versions of things. What data was used to fine tune, all of that stuff. They often end up in disparate systems with very little traceability in it, which sends enterprise architects insane. So, all right, so what do we have to help with that? So that's part of the thesis around AI Studio. So AI Studio is our platform, and something I forgot to mention about talking about the models, and that is unique to Mistral, is that the vast majority of the models that I showed you on that slide are actually deployable on-prem. They're deployable within a Cloud-VPC environment or air-gapped environments, as well as serverless and with dedicated instances as well. Our AI Studio, our platform, contains abilities, and we're going to go into some features are available now, some things we're working on, so this is a little bit of a sneak peek. I know it's a Friday afternoon, but hopefully some things will spark your interest. And it's built on learnings that we have working with customers to get things into production. So traces and observation provide a clearer view into model behavior, what tools are being used, when are agents being invoked, are they being invoked the right way, workflows to meet some of those enterprise needs, and governance of all of those assets with traceability. All right, so I'll kind of go over these a little bit quickly. Observability, specifically like the traces, explorer, judges, and campaigns, is literally the same tool set our own internal teams used. My colleague Mark is actually at our table right now, and they use this to help make Mistral's models better, and we are shipping this to customers in AI Studio. Agents and workflows, so leveraging, again, that same traceability and observability all within the same place, so you're not going across disparate systems to try and find that information. And finally, AI registry for unification of all of those assets. So these are all going to be available in AI Studio. Some parts of it are available now, and we are allow listing customers on a case-by-case basis for some of these. Oops, there we go. So AI observability, right? So we do have things like the Explorer, right? So for traces and being able to inspect production traffic. The judges and campaigns, so this is LLM as a judge capability that we use ourselves. Data sets, so being able to pin specific sets of data if you're spot sampling or subsampling for any production use cases, understanding how things are performing, and then as well as traces and dashboards. Workflows, so being able to have linear views on every single invocation that's happening, and being able to leverage some of those judges and campaigns to understand how they're doing over time, as well as different deployment modes, on-prem and in the cloud. And AI registry, this is our unified catalog. So all those assets we talked about, all in the same place, all visible. All right, let me attempt to pause and go into a demo. All right. 1 second, please bear with me. I am doing this one-handed. Okay, so this should be, if anyone is brave enough to try it, if you sign up with Mistral, you can access and see much of what I'm showing you right now. So this is our console for AI Studio. You'll notice that there's kind of 3 big buckets of things. There's a create, where you can play with some of the models, examine traces and responses, create agents. You can create those programmatically in our SDK. You can actually go in and prompt a few of these as well. Observation, so where things are happening, where those traces live. And then improve, so running evaluation. If there's a need to fine tune, you can do that as well. So for today, I'm going to show you just maybe a few things. So let's take a look at Playground. I was typing this earlier, but let's see if we can finish it up now. In Battery Park. On a Friday. Okay. And you'll notice that you're able to pick any of the models I talked about, as well as if you have fine-tuned models that are available, pick those out as well. You do this, it automatically creates a trace that's available in the observability suite that you can go examine and see the invocation of. So in this case, I'll do medium. You can change the configuration here. I'd say let's just let it roll. All right, and here we go. It's a lot of stuff. So just as I've made this one chat completion call, I have a data set prepared that contains some other calls that we can take a look at and view what that telemetry looks like. So in this case, I had some questions about financial regulations. This is New York after all. And here's a full view of what that trace looks like. So here you have the system prompts that we had put in, right? This is kind of standard system messages that you'll see. You're an expert in financial services, so on. And then the user message, right? I work in a bank and I want to be an investor in a fund. Is this allowed? And then you will see that you get the full trace of the tool call, the tools that were used, the sources, and then the response. So having this all in the same place where you can use some of the same data to go create new training sets, determine if it's fitting any sort of evaluation criteria is super beneficial. All right, just taking a look at, I think I've got one that does multiple tool calls in here. You're able to see in the trace, again, the full output. And then let's just take a quick peek at one more. Yeah, this one was good. It was multiple tool calls. So you're able to have the full trace of what happens, the model that's being used, and everything all the way through. All right, and then finally, I'll just show you judges for now. So judges run evaluations. This can be done in batch. You can do them on the fly. I've pre-prepared a little bit just with that same data set. And what I'm really asking it to do is just score how well the model, or in this case, this configuration of the model is doing for not giving legal advice. So the good news is all of our guardrails work. So for full traceability, you actually get, for each one of these, an explanation of the score, which is super beneficial to understanding why it made that call and why it said, yes, it's compliant. Cool. All right, so that's AI Studio. I'm gonna tab back to our Prezzo for a second and do a quick time check. Next, I'll spend a few minutes just talking about going to production. So some of these may be obvious, but this is based on something I really worked with. This was not at Mistral, but it was part of my journey of how I came to Mistral, which I think was quite interesting. So a lot of people saw some code today. I'm gonna talk about this, this little bit of experience. So working with like a large bank, they are looking to cost optimize. And that's kind of the first bucket there, is understanding why you're doing something. So legal expertise for financial regulations is super expensive. There's only so many people that can do it. And being able to have AI assist as part of that flow is super beneficial. It's beneficial for just the cost optimization, just making sure your resources don't go crazy. So that's part of the why. The why helps you create like a measurable metric to move to prod. So in this case, there was a cost per query that we worked with the customer to help understand that every sort of legal question ended up being like a lot of money. So having an automated system that can go look at their regulations and come back with a salient answer. Also, ensuring that it's not giving unsolicited advice that fits within their legal bounds was a big deal. So that's one of the whys in this case. Generally, you follow two flows with the whys. One is this kind of cost reduction piece. The other one is, I'm shipping you features. Here's some new AI feature that we're launching. We can charge extra for it, and there's usually a P&L attached to it. And that helps you get to your quantifiable metrics. So kind of going down the list, prototypes are easy. So who here has built a RAG application? Right, most people. In my case, it was, you have 2 days to build this. We're taking this to the CEO, and this is something we are going to do. So thanks to Gen AI, it's become super easy to build RAG applications, right? And prototyping and showing proof of value is super easy. In this case, we were greenlit right away, no additional guidance, no notes, put into production by this date. Never happens. So most of the processes that you're gonna run into are still very much application oriented, which leads us to the next point. Software development best practices still applies, and in enterprise, it has not changed. There's still evolution that's happening for generative AI, but things are the way they are, especially in financial or regulated industries. Something I ran into is that packages have to adhere to enterprise standards. So I love LangChain and Crew AI and a lot of the folks here and some of the other things. In secure enterprise, unless it's past security review, usually you cannot run those things in production. So where does that leave you? Right, so you're gonna go two paths, one, the approval path, or two, reworking things. So I just mentioned this as something that you probably should do early in going to production, especially if you're leveraging a framework or a proven tool, or a tool that is not proven in production with your enterprise already. Kind of moving down that list is know your data documents, or KYD. In my case, we had early success. Right, semantic retrieval worked great. It was able to pull out the regs that we needed. It was able to cite exactly where theirs were. And this backfired spectacularly once we started having additional users use it later on in the software development lifecycle. So during UATs and like blue-green testing, what we realized is not everybody searches the same way. So, and our base retriever with just page level chunking did not work. So why is that important? It looks easy at face value. Early success really does burn you. There's been a lot of great sessions today and on deep learning about how to do that with different, like I call them technology techniques. You can do chunking strategies. You can use different retrievers and like a slew of other techniques. I guess the takeaway is that there's no clear path besides getting user feedback early to be able to help mitigate some of these things and then work towards a solution. In my case, it was legal documents are really, really like word dense. There's a lot of filler words and there's a lot of self-referential pieces. Sometimes there's conflicting pieces when you bring them in where there is a recency bias on new rules, but still referencing old ones, which sends just nearest neighbors lookup insane. So things like hybrid retrievers, being able to do just simple term frequency work actually does help with pre-processing your data that way. Also profiling your users. So understanding your cohort, right? I'm of a more experienced generation, where when you search, sometimes you'll just type in keyword type search, whereas I think nowadays people are more used to like semantic type searching. That actually does have a big effect on how your retriever does work and the results that you're gonna get. So just, something to do. Security and compliance. Again, this is purely a financial services thing, but I think many regulatory industries work the same way. You have to do it, bring them in early, otherwise you're in for a world of pain. In my case, some of the fundamental changes to SDKs and architecture were needed, and that added months to our timeline. So at the end of this, we eventually made this into production, but we were off by like 6 months. And a lot of that had to do with model risk review processes. If you've ever run into those, they can be brutal. Understanding when you have to have legal teams talk to other legal teams for things like red teaming proof and support. What is the proof of value? Does it hit the OWASP top 10? Those are all great guidelines for laying out a framework of things you need to do to get things into a regulated environment in production. It also helps flag downstream dependencies. So in our case, SDK changes needed to happen to adhere to certain protocol formats, as well as proxying, which again is a hugely popular pattern in financial services where literally every call to an external provider is scanned and to make sure you're not exfiltrating things you're not supposed to exfiltrate and there's no PII in it. So something to take care of. Everything's gone well. You're in production, everyone's happy, champagne's popped, all of that. Everything's great until contact with a larger audience. So then, you're getting into all sorts of wonderful feedback. Some people just don't like having to use a chatbot for things, and you have to accept that. But the only way you're gonna understand that is if you're actually recording what's going on. I'll bring it back to AI Studio and just the observability. If I had something like that then, instead of dealing with arcane enterprise tools, looking at system outs, this would have made everyone's life a little bit easier. So that's that. There's also a great lesson here. So my background started in predictive machine learning, applied stats. For any of that stuff, there was always debt to be paid after going into production with something. You had to keep your models ensuring there weren't drift. Generative AIs are not different. I think they're actually harder because the data you're getting back out of it is very unstructured. It's very difficult to calculate drift. And that's part of the judges and evaluations. And like I said, we're using that stuff internally. We're bringing those features to you in Studio. And that's stuff I think that has helped us out a lot. So I just want to do a quick time check. I think we do have time for questions, so I'll open it up.
All right, I'll let you call on people and then I'll bring the mic around and
Sure.
Leslie can help me as well.
Gentleman in the front.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Bharat. I'm with Pfizer Pharma. You spoke about security and compliance. It's a nightmare to think about GXP compliance because it's validation in pharma industry is all about performing the same action and getting the same repeatable result every time. Any thoughts on customers that you have that have cracked this code on validation? Because it's really hard with all these models to prove repeatable actions, right? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of it has to do with standards not being updated. So this is on that same use case. We realized the playbook they were using for this, they gave us like a 15-page document. was written for a predictive machine learning like workload that had to go out. And that was part of working with our stakeholders early. I actually had that in my notes, but I didn't say it, right? If you're working with your stakeholders early, you're able to like navigate some of those things a little easier and get sponsorship to get like warrants to skip some of those where they make sense. There are things that we absolutely could not skip. And like, I mean, when it got down to it, it was you had to be compliant or you would never pass the gate. And I think both like, myself working at that provider as well as the customer, in this case the bank, making sure that everyone was pulling in the same direction helped a lot with that as well, right? It's definitely not easy. It's no one has, what I've realized is that no one really has a silver bullet for any of that stuff just yet. And this is some of the stuff that's holding up stuff going into prod. And if you can bring your security teams and compliance teams in early to help understand that, you're not gonna have, like we had, I mean, the original project was slated at 4 months, we ended up at like 10, so. Yeah. Anyone else? Oh, gentleman in the front, and then in the back.
Okay, we'll do.
Oh, we'll do the back first.
Thanks so much. And yeah, I can definitely relate to the security and compliance kind of slowing down development. One problem we have is that the underlying landscape is changing so fast that once you get one SDK or one model through all of that, it's already like 2 generations behind. So I'm wondering how you think about operating on a 6 to 10 month timeline in an industry that is shifting as fast as it is.
Yeah, and that's actually, I didn't mention this at the end, even though I said I was going to mention it. Part of my journey to Mistral is about a month or 2 after production, everyone was happy. That bank told me, all right, 80% of our data lives on-prem and it is not accessible to the internet and completely air-gapped. Put your model there and then we'll talk. And the company I was working with did not have that option. And then we started looking at options, and I heard about this small French AI company that is no longer small and it's global, that had the flexibility to do things like that. The other thing that kind of burns you on some of that stuff as well is deprecation timelines. So not every provider will keep things up to a certain time, GPUs are finite, that sort of thing. With having provenance over your model, like stuff we offer with being able to deploy on-prem and things like that, having open source, open weight alternatives, not just ours, any open source, open weight alternative is really great at mitigating those longer timeframes. At a point, you're gonna have to draw a line in the sand and decide what you wanna do, and if that's compatible with some of the processes you have. It's a big change management exercise. A lot of regulated industries have not gone through yet. So, thank you for the question.
Hi, thanks for the talk. I was just wondering on EU regulation, whether you had any kind of thoughts as a French company of the pros and cons of the way that is going compared to, say, the regulation in the US and China.
Sorry, if I can just replay that one. Like, how do we see the EU regulations affecting?
Yeah, specifically for your own company, do you find is it a strength that you're positioning in towards, or is it something that is a threat, given that you're a French company? Like,
I mean, you know, and Andrew had, like, I think a really good talk track on this. Thank you for the question. But, like, I think, so one, I am not a lawyer, right? 2, I think Andrew had a really good talk track on this. This, like, in terms of governance and regulation, I think it's tricky where if you have too much of it, you're going to stifle innovation and growth. And this is just my opinion. I'm not going to, you know, I do not represent, like, the legal views of the company, right? But if you don't have some pieces in place, then it's absolute chaos with things like safety and, you know, some of the other stuff that you're starting to see that pop up in the industry. So I guess, I know it's probably not good to say this, but I don't have like a substantial answer other than, like, me personally, I believe that there's gotta be a balance. Starting to see regulations happen, I think, is good. And I think just with, like, the rate of change and pacing and things like that, it's gonna help, not put brakes on things, but it's gonna make people think through more in terms of deployment, safety, and as more and more children and that sort of thing start using some of these systems, that becomes super important.